This is something as rare as an American fantasy-inspired setting with intricate resource management and persistent base building. The indie scene is where RTS games are born and bred these days, and if there's one RTS game I've had my eye on in the past few years thanks to the openness of the devs, it's Arcane Wilds. After years of work, the game is finally out in early access on Steam, and today I'm collaborating with Avancadia to bring you a full showcase of what this game is all about. So make sure to check the game out on Steam, and let's get right to it. Arcane Wilds offers a lot of features I've never seen elsewhere, and what you'll notice first is this setting. This is essentially a mythological new world fought in mystical but recognizable environments, filled with magical creatures that serve as non-faction enemies on which you sharpen your blade. As colorful as this world might look, it also feels dark and foreign, seeing as the fog of war is pure black and all-encompassing, meaning that exploration and discovering the hidden is a crucial part of any skirmish. The enemies you'll encounter range from fairly soft troll-like men to scary witches with AoE spells and other monsters of enormous size, but arguably even more frightful are the other factions. These maps and missions is where the traditional action happens, where you cut your trees, mine your essence, and take down your enemies. But what's awesome about the campaign of Arcane Wilds, which by the way can be played in multiplayer, is that it's not just a string of skirmish battles, because all of them are connected to your main base, the hub island of sorts. This is where you spend these special resources you've gained in battle to raise buildings which act as centers of upgrade. This means that if you have the resources and the right level of aim, you may upgrade individual units tied to these buildings and choose the direction you want them to excel at, whether that be with better offensive or defensive stats, or sometimes even unlocking new abilities. This is what you want to focus on in the long term to hit the enemy where it hurts. But in order to unlock anything at all, you're gonna need those resources I mentioned earlier, one of which is fame, and the others which are various minerals gathered from specific missions. Thing is, missions in Arcane Wilds are chosen at your port, and are expanded as you gain more fame. Missions can be played on a variety of difficulties, and in the beginning I do recommend playing on either easy or medium, as any higher than that will be tough as nails to beat. But completing these missions provides much needed resources like diamonds, and offer various challenges too, like protecting a monument from enemy invasion, capturing a sacred relic before the enemy does, or protecting various local pioneers from enemy incursion. In this way, the missions of this game adds variety to every map, even though the maps themselves are pretty similar depending on the region you choose to fight in. Many things in Arcane Wilds demand so-called fame. For your base, fame is something you acquire based on your performance in the last mission, and more fame points means a higher fame level. It is reaching higher fame levels that allows you to raise new buildings and reach better upgrades on the home island, but in the missions themselves, fame is something different. You see, as in many RTS games, Arcane Wilds limits the amount of units you can have at any point, but gathering fame through destroying your enemies raises your in-mission fame level, which in turn increases the amount of units you can recruit at any time. Everything in this game runs on resources, with wood being what you need to raise buildings and recruit units, and speaking of recruitment, that's something else that's highly unique to Arcane Wilds, because instead of recruiting whenever you want to, you may only schedule units for delivery here. This is because units arrive in waves, namely once a minute, and if you schedule your units just a little too late, you'll have to wait for the next fleet to arrive, where you'll have to plan ahead, thinking about your resources, what you can afford when, and whether it's better to wait until the next minute to get reinforcements or not. Arcane Wilds offers 3 factions in total, each one playable, although at this point with one caveat. First, we have the Army, a faction heavily inspired by the Union forces of the mid and late 19th century. This is what you would call a standard army, fielding both close-quarter saber slashers and the crucial sniper unit, which is arguably the army's best unit when leveled up, and we'll get to why later. The second faction is the Colony, a rebel-like faction which is more reminiscent of the American Wild West and the South. Being a bit more rugged, the Colony's most awesome unit by far has to be the Gatling gun, which is entirely unique in the game and has a special ability I'll tell you more about in a second. The Colony though does not at the moment have a unique campaign, but can be played in skirmish mode. The third and final faction is the Tribe, a faction largely modeled on Native American tribes whose archer units are unique enough, but who can conjure mythical creatures to fight for their cause. So far, I've talked a bit about mostly aesthetic differences between these factions, but there's a lot more to it. Every faction shares similarities, like the engineer or gatherer unit, which is used as your general worker. But whereas the tribe gatherer only really gathers resources, the army engineer can both gather resources and raise buildings at the same time, making them very versatile. However, whereas the army and colony's wagon unit can only pick up already harvested resources and raise buildings using those resources, the tribe's wagon may itself convert into a building for no other cost than the wagon itself. These are just some of the cool ways factions play differently, and you'll have to keep that in mind going forward. The most unique resource of Arcane Wilds has to be the duality of essence and corruption, magical resources which are only found on certain corrupted ground. You can mine essence from the ore, which in turn creates corruption. You can only use that corruption if a building has been placed on the corrupted area. Corruption is a resource in itself which allows you to upgrade buildings and in turn upgrade units, and buildings on the same ground share the available local corruption. As such, it's important to take care of your buildings placed here especially. Essence, on the other hand, is a more active resource, which can be picked up by your units. Essence, however, can be used for two things. First, if you pick up essence and place it in your harbor, the essence will be converted into fame, allowing you to increase that level without doing any excess fighting. But the arguably more fun thing to do with essence is to utilize the special abilities of your important units. You see, this is where those snipers and Gatling guns we talked about before return. Because while you can upgrade the stats of your snipers with corruption through your buildings to unlock new abilities, the essence is what allows the actual use of the abilities. The snipe ability, for example, is a particularly powerful shot, which means that if you have a bunch of these guys running around, they're going to hit hard. You can even right-click the ability to auto-use it whenever they can, meaning that they'll snipe hard as soon as an enemy enters their vision, and will do so again when the cooldown is over. For the Gatling gun, essence allows them to pepper an area in non-stop glorious automatic fire for as long as the essence remains, dealing significantly faster and higher damage than their regular relatively low damage shots. For both the sniper and the Gatling gun then, they both unleash their vast potential solely because of essence, meaning it's vital to keep it around. Thing is, every unit may carry a certain amount of one resource at a time, meaning that the Gatling gun can carry its own essence and spend it. But if you are more logistical about it, you could also have a wagon carry a 10 times bigger load right beside it, because as long as the essence is in the vicinity of a friendly unit, the unit will spend that essence on their ability. In this way, your choice of how to transport this resource is up to you, but it's awesome that there are several ways of doing so, and that unit abilities and capabilities change so drastically depending on it. And speaking of resources, Arcane Wilds adds another moment of intensity you don't really see elsewhere, because it's actually possible to steal the enemy's resources, even after they've been nicely stored in a facility. And of course, the enemy may do this to you as well. This means that if you're not careful and have placed armed guards around your workers, for example, you might just have your hard harvested stuff stolen from right under your nose. It makes it feel all the better though when you're the one doing the stealing, of course, especially when the enemy has gathered up a whole chunk of essence in just one spot and you swoop in with a superior army and just gobble it all up. Arcane Wilds is a unique and fun experience all on its own, but it's also heavily focused on multiplayer, meaning that you can jump in and out of these campaigns together, offer other players the option to jump into a battle mid-campaign, or duke it out in skirmish matches with all human, partial AI, or all AI enemies and allies. And as such, Arcane Wilds is already in its early access stage, a unique and fun RTS whose uniqueness and charm shines through everything. I will say though that it would be cool if we had naval battles too, to perhaps stop incoming reinforcements from ever reaching the shore, or to transport resources another way, but I guess that's a wish for another day. Let me know what you think of Arcane Wilds so far, and make sure to check the game out on Steam right now. Remember to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, thank you so much to Avancadia for sponsoring this video, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!